This is the Generation Report. I am Paul Zimmy Finn. Hope you're doing well. F. Scott Fitzgerald referred to the 1920s as the greatest, gaudiest spree in history. And a century later, the decade's reputation as one of history's most fun times is still going strong. Lately, spurred on by the search for a good party, many in the media and elsewhere have predicted that another Roaring Twenties is on the horizon once the coronavirus emergency is over. With so many people itching to get out of the house and so much spending going on in the economy, a decade similar to the one from a century ago seems imminent, if you believe the stories. Will the 2020s really resemble a party at Jay Gatsby's, with people in varying states of sobriety, socializing every which way until the band goes home, unburdened by any thoughts of the future? No way, old sport. Every season in nature has characteristic identifiers, and every season in history does as well. In both nature and history, autumn is a time of entropy and decay. During the time that spans autumns in nature, the days grow progressively cooler and the leaves change color. During the time that spans autumns in history, society scatters apart and people show less and less concern for what they share collectively. The 1920s were a time of conspicuous detachment and disengagement from civic life in America, and the Lost Generation was particularly instrumental in creating that atmosphere. Born at the end of the 19th century, the Lost earned a reputation as wild, cynical, and distrustful of authority long before they came of age. For this generation of survivors, encountering World War I and the Spanish flu as young adults supplied all the motivation necessary to respond by speculating, rule-breaking, and pleasure-seeking. But once again, the freneticism which ensued in the 1920s was the product of a detachment from civic affairs which all generations felt, and this is what confirms the Roaring Twenties as part of an autumn of history. As Fitzgerald summarized the era after it was over, the Jazz Age had no interest at all in politics. Moving from the 20th century to the 21st, are the events making news in 2021 relegating conversations about America's future to the background? Is today's economic spending taking place without constant overtures to some big social or political purpose? Does the social mood which has spanned the past few years reflect that people seem ready to cease focusing on the political differences in the country? Do millennials, a generation long renowned for risk aversion and willingness to abide by social authority, make ideal candidates to cut loose like the Lost Generation did? For the 2020s to resemble the 1920s, whether the idealized version or the decade as it actually was, we would need to see a dramatically different social, political, and generational dimension to events taking place today. Quite simply, the 2020s will be dramatically different than the Roaring Twenties, and not by accident. It will be because we are in a winter of history this time. The anticipation of another decade like the 1920s is clearly a mixture of wishful thinking and misplaced nostalgia. But what this Roaring Twenties fixation also reveals is how far removed history has become from serious study. Only in a context where the Fourth Turning's insights are so widely refuted and dismissed could stories like this proliferate. And if the lockdowns end as expected this summer, any wild partying will be used by a new round of media outlets and experts to continue the Roaring Twenties narrative. Eventually, however, this illusion that America is headed for an entire decade of carefree partying at the expense of dealing with serious issues will no longer be able to sustain itself. Like every season in nature, every season in history runs a course, and the winter we're living through is leading somewhere quite different than a scene reminiscent of The Great Gatsby. The sooner that's recognized, the better, because the 2020s are going to be one sobering time. If you enjoy this content, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone important to you. Thank you for listening, and may God bless America.